So I remember the day that our oldest child, I think it was our son Jordan, came home after having been at a birthday party with some friends. And the host family was living a really great quality of life, if you know what I'm talking about. And they had amazing activities for this birthday party. And he came home with like the most unbelievable party favors that you can imagine. And he just had an amazing time at this birthday party. And he gets home and he announces, okay, maybe some of you have heard this before, I wish I was in their family. Anybody ever heard that one before? And you're like, well, what's wrong with this one? You ever felt like that? Let's actually just do a show of hands. You ever felt like that before? You're like, man, either I wish I was in that family before, or I'd rather not have a family. No need for a show of hands because they may be with you today. I have one, but I'd like to get away from them. Or how about just like a do-over? If any of those apply to you, like, hey, I want a new family, right? And it's easy to feel that way because, can we hear it for these people? Being a parent is really tough, isn't it? Absolutely, that's right. There are so many demands, right? There's a lot of voices that are competing for our attention. Our culture is screaming at us, and that voice gets louder and louder. We have to constantly hear comparisons and maybe sometimes make them ourselves with other families and what they're doing. We got to juggle friends. And then we got to screen those friends if we're a good parent, right? And we've got to manage technology and social media. And when my wife, Chris, and I were raising our kids, who are now, they're adults of their own right now. But when we were raising our kids, we had talks with them about sex and about your body is changing. We never had to have any conversations with our kids about choosing a sex or whether they should change their body. It's different, isn't it? And then some of us were like wondering, okay, I think maybe I'm too harsh as a parent, and others are going, I just know I'm being too permissive. And then for the most part, right, 99, just wild guess here, % of us go, you know what? I just don't feel very equipped for the job. Anybody? I think one of my favorite comedians, Jim Gaffigan, says it so well when I pulled this quote from him today. He says, every night before I get my 1 hour of sleep, I have the same thought. Well, that's a wrap on another day of acting like I know what I'm doing. I wish I were exaggerating, but I'm not. Most of the time, I feel entirely unqualified to be a parent. I call these times being awake. You ever felt that way before, or you are feeling that way right now? It's tough being a parent, isn't it? You know what else is tough? It's tough being a kid. It is. It's tough being a kid. Our kids are facing a lot. You've got the influence from friends and the pressure from our culture, anxiety, depression, right? That's become fairly normal for our kids. I read a survey recently, said 40% of college students recently said they felt too depressed to function. 60% of them actually said that they feel no hope about the future. So we got to deal with the influence of phones and social media. Okay, the average 8 to 12-year-old is spending 5 hours and 33 minutes every day on a phone. A 13 to 18-year-old is averaging 8 hours and 39 minutes a day of screen time. And I don't say that to say that it's harmful or negative necessarily, all of it, but the two most dominant things that they are hearing and learning from culture and social media are, one, you can and should have it all. And two, you're not enough. You're not smart enough, you're not the right age, the right weight, you may not even be the right gender. Our kids are facing a lot. And furthermore, and we're just gonna press in for a few minutes here before we get to the Bible. Furthermore, there are things that, is it even possible that we could all learn things together, right? Because we're at so many different stages of this thing called family, right? Look around the room, you're like, there's babies in here and there's people sitting next to their adult children and we have grandparents in here, and if you have more than one kid, you get one shot per child. That's encouraging, isn't it? Some parents joke about we made all of our mistakes on the first one, right? And so if you have 4 kids, okay, you joke sometimes about the youngest one pretty much just raises himself or herself, right? And then the truth is that we learn along the way, isn't it? And so we're at these different stages, and it would be awesome if every kid was just kind of like a copy and paste version of the previous one or the one that we got right, okay? And then because every time we add one more to the mix, the dynamics change, don't they? See, some of us in the room or watching are newly formed families. Like we have a new baby. That's us. Congratulations, that's awesome. But we're not sleeping a lot, are we? And we do a lot of baby checking. Okay, we call it responsible. It might be overprotective. But if your experience has been amazing, you might look at your partner and go, you know what? I think we can do this again, and let's do it right away. It's going to be amazing, right? Best thing ever. Others of us are having a different conversation about whether or not we're still within the return window, if you know what I mean. So some of us are kind of in the toddler and the preteen stages, right? We don't have babies, but our kids are still pretty much dependent on us for everything. And I remember that stage going, it can be fun. Like I really enjoy it, and there's a lot of activities, and there's play dates, and these moments, I really love them. But what's with the endless questions? And I read that kids on average ask 288 questions a day, which is one every 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Anybody know that one? Okay. Others of us are in the teen stage. It's like you have to schedule time with them just so you can actually, continue to get to know them. You don't see them a lot because they're in their room or they're maybe hanging out with their friends, right? And yet you kind of get this feeling that more things are about to change for you because people are making decisions and plans about college or about entering the workforce or at least moving out. And then, can I just hear it from my fellow empty nesters, huh? Absolutely. And all the people with babies are like, what? I don't get that. I mean, we made it. That's what I'd like to say. We made it, okay? We walk around the house with less clothes on. We watch what we want. On average, most of us do. We watch what we want when we want, right? We take different vacations than we used to take, don't we? It's amazing. This whole empty nest thing, when Chris and I bought our most recent house, we said, let's buy a house that has just enough space so that everybody can come back and visit, but not enough room so that people could move back in. So that's what we did, okay? And yes, some of us were likely still helping people pay for college, but we're over here, we pray and we hope that we've done our very best. A few years back, I was sitting in a meeting when one of the people, a mom of 3 kids, got a phone call from the school, and I don't know exactly what it was about, but she was really upset and she was stressed. And then she said to me, aren't you glad you don't have to deal with that stuff anymore because your kids are grown? And I very specifically remember saying, listen, let me tell you what happens when your kids grow. Sometimes the problems do too. And that's a whole other phase, isn't it? Aren't you glad you came today? That was pretty encouraging. So listen, so if you're ready to throw up your arms and throw in the towel and walk away from it, or you just want to disappear, go into witness protection, you want to run to another family, or maybe you're going, okay, I just know that things could be a little bit different for the people in my life, then the next few weeks, okay, this series is for all of us. And I'd like to say it this way, that my approach is not like to beat us up about what's wrong. I really want to try to come at and build us up, all right? Can we agree to that? We're not going to beat up, we're going to build up. That's the plan. So, because if you could actually have the family that you truly want with all of the people that are currently a part of it, wouldn't that be amazing? Now, there are some of us here today, and we're already going, I really don't know what's in this for me for the next few weeks, all right? I truly do believe there's something for everyone. And that means whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you have kids, whether you want to be a parent someday, maybe you're an aunt, maybe you're an uncle, you're a grandparent, maybe you're just navigating the world of co-parenting. How are we going to do that? Maybe you don't have kids of your own, okay, but you work in our kids ministry or in our Chaos student ministry, or maybe this, right? You're an adult and you have kids who live next door to you and you think they were entirely out of control, okay? This is for you. And then there's certainly so much application for all of us just in the general sense on how we navigate this and play our part as what we call the family of God. So I think there's something for everybody. So here's what we're going to do. I'm just simply going to lay a foundation for where we're going in the next few weeks. And you might be dissatisfied at the end, but I'm just telling you, this is about as simple and straightforward as we can make it. It's just going to be a starting point for your family to build upon. And we're going to go way back a few thousand years to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, okay? As a matter of fact, if you are still bringing your hard copy of the scriptures, which I would encourage you to do, it's an amazing way for us to study together. We're going to open up at the very beginning and go to the 5th book of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We're going to read chapter 6. But in chapter 5, you, whether you know anything about this story or not, probably know something that happened here. What Moses has just done is he's just handed out the 10 commandments to the nation of Israel. And while there's way more than 10, okay, these are the really big ones that God wanted people to live by. And it's essentially Moses in what we're going to read, chapter 6, saying, hey, if you follow these things for yourself and then you teach your children to do these things, your family could be changed. And not just your immediate family, but the next generation and the one after that, and maybe even the one after that. This is the way it reads in chapter 6, starting in verse 4. Listen, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God. Would you guys read this word? It gets repeated several times with me, loud and strong. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with your soul and with your strength. These words that I'm giving you today are to be in your heart. This is what we know of later by Jesus as the first and the greatest commandment. I mean, Jesus quoted these words several times in the Gospels. He would have recited them daily as a Jewish boy in the morning, midday, and then evening. We have friends who still hang this in the entryway of their home. Maybe you're familiar with it. It's called the Shema, which is just the Hebrew word that begins that paragraph. Moses says, listen, because God is the one true God, the proper response we should have is to love him with absolutely everything you have. I mean, all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your strength. Now, there's two things he's going to challenge us with, and here's the first building block, and it's not that creative. It's exactly what he says. Love God. Hey, love God with everything you have. Listen, the greatest thing that you can give to your family is your love for God. If you've ever flown on a plane, right, you have heard the instructions before takeoff. And by the way, does anybody really believe that your cushion is a flotation device? I'm not sure I'm buying that. But you've heard this one before, okay? In the case that there's a loss of cabin pressure, yellow oxygen masks will deploy from the ceiling compartment located above you. Please take care of your mask before assisting others around you. I mean, you know what they're saying, right? Is that in order to best help other people, please make sure that you're up to the task, right? This is essentially what Moses is saying right here, that the best way for you to potentially help your family is to make sure that you, and this is me as well, are first and foremost up to the task. And you'll be up to the task when you are loving God with absolutely everything that you have. Can I just make it a little bit more real and personal and say that as a parent, your highest priority is to know Jesus. Your highest priority is to know and grow in a relationship with Jesus. So let me just talk generally about coming to faith in Jesus. Think about this and see if you can put all this together, okay? 2/3 of us will actually choose to follow Jesus before the age of 18. Less than 1/4 of us will do so after the age of 21. And we could debate all the reasons on why that might be. It doesn't change the fact that the most normal way for a person to come to know Jesus is when they're young and through the influence of their family. Okay, half of all kids are led to Jesus by their parents or other family members. Now, if so, okay, mom, dad, your kids need you to have a growing relationship with Jesus. When a mother comes to Jesus first, her family will join her here at church 17% of the time. Some of you have been writing that for Mother's Day for years. You should keep doing it, okay? But when dad comes to faith in Jesus first, his family joins him 93% of the time. So could I just talk as one dad to some other dads for a minute this morning and say, because listen, I get it. Okay, you want to be the protector of your family. You want to be the provider of your family. You want to be thought of as the hero to your wife and to your kids. And we like to be tough and we like to be independent and think that we have it all together and we're strong. But the most important thing you can do for your family, and listen, the one that will leave a lasting legacy, is to place your faith and your trust in Jesus. Because when you place your faith and your trust in Jesus, what you are saying and what you are moving towards is learning how to be led by the very best father we will ever know. Matter of fact, I love the fact that we baptize so many adults around here. It tells me that we're changing some of the statistics. I love that because it tells me that it's just never too late. Like, it's never too late, right, to make a decision that has the impact potentially to change families for generations. So listen, if you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're a grandparent, if you're an adult, right, who lives next door to a family, you're working in our kids or our student ministry, listen, your very best contribution to the next generation will probably come when you think less about being the parent of a child and more about being the child of God, the Father. I love that we're about to baptize some people at the end of this service, and we have some parents who are baptizing their kids. How amazing is that? Yeah. Because listen, when you're learning about God as Father, right, you're learning, okay, He loves us, He guides us, He cares for us, He's in charge of absolutely everything. So when we're loving God, right, with everything we have, now we have something, right, or I would say the most important thing to pass on to our children, which is where Moses goes next. In verse 7, he says, repeat them to your children. Okay, refresher, repeat what? Well, what he just said was the words I'm giving you, or the commands of God. Hey, how to live life as God actually intended, a love for God. Repeat that, right? He says it this way. Talk about those things when you sit in your house, when you walk along the road, when you lay down, when you get up. Bind them, this sounds a little strange, bind them as a sign on your hand. Let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your city gates. Now, what he's kind of talking about here, at some point, some Jewish rabbis began to take those last words quite literally. They would actually take fragments of scripture or write something down, put it in a little box, like a ring box or something like that, wear it on their wrist and wear one on their forehead. Their intention was so that people would see them and think that they were actually really great and holy and righteous people. Jesus in the Gospels actually came along and had some pretty harsh words for that because he knew it was mostly just a show. Because when it comes to what I would call spiritual formation, right, your household is not just simply a product of what you say. Okay, your family is a product of what you actually practice and do. And the point Moses was making is that conversations about faith and life and God can happen absolutely anywhere and at any time. It's a way of life. That's what we're talking about. I love our tagline that we threw in for the series, right? That you don't have to leave your family. Instead, you could do what Moses is saying here. Point number 2, you could lead your family. And listen, again, as a dad who's been there at some point in the past, and now I'm in a whole different phase, like, I know that sounds intimidating. I used to hear it and go, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And as scary as it might be for some of us, listen, it doesn't change the fact that I believe God has designed you, okay, as a mom and as a dad, as a guardian maybe at this point, to be the primary spiritual leader for your family. It doesn't mean that you have to have all of the Bible's answers. It doesn't mean that you have to have these elaborate and amazing devotions and be a world-class prayer. That's not what we're talking about. What Moses outlines is that there are just some natural rhythms in life or just in a regular day where you should be looking for opportunities to talk about God. We actually put an excellent resource. There's a couple of them over in our cafe. If you didn't know we have a cafe, follow around that way and you'll find it eventually. There's like a whole other world back there if you don't know about it. But in the cafe, we put a couple of resources and we'll add to it over the next couple of weeks. But there's a book over there called Habits of the Household that I've read recently, in which he gives some very, very practical examples of how you can do this. Now, you should, and let's just talk about boys for a second, you should teach your son how to tie his shoes. And you should teach him how to tie a tie and probably how to mow the yard. Can I get an amen, dads? You should probably teach him how to cook something so he doesn't starve, right? How to catch a football, how to ask a girl on a date. And you should most definitely teach him how to love God. Moses says right here, just keep repeating it. Like just say the same thing over and over again. Repeat the truth about God. Talk about what's right, talk about what's wrong, and find a way for this to be a natural part of your family rhythm. It might be family devotions. There's a bajillion resources out there. It might be a family prayer time. Hey, before we go to school or before you get out of the car, before we go to bed. I don't know. It might be during playtime. One of our most amazing times to have conversations was in carpool. It was fantastic. But for us, without a doubt, okay, our dinner table was one of the greatest places for our family and what I would call informal teaching. I'm not suggesting in the least bit that this was easy or oftentimes practical. Because we have 3 kids, and oftentimes at the end of it, my wife was like, I have 4 kids, okay? So that was kind of my thing at dinner sometimes. But listen, it would have been easier if everybody would have just got their own thing, gone to their room, hid out, and done their own thing, and they would have been happier. But listen, nearly every night, okay? Nearly every night until they moved out, even on nights when we had sporting events and activities, you're gonna sit in your chair, you're gonna hold hands, we're going to say a prayer. You're going to learn how to say a prayer. We're going to pass the dishes when possible and practical. We will eat like civilized people. If you can't do that, you're going to need to stand there while you eat, but you cannot leave the table, okay? We will wait for everyone to finish so that you can carry your own dishes to the kitchen, all right? Now listen, some of the very best teaching happened for us at the table. I'm not saying that you have to do that. Everyone, all right, when we start dinner, gets a chance to share their high moment and their low moment of the day. As they got older, we used words like happy and crappy. That seemed more appropriate, okay? We had 100 conversations about tattoos, okay? 100 probably. Is this a good idea? Should you? Should you not? And the 2 most important questions we drilled into people over and over and over again. You need to know what you're gonna get and where you're gonna put it. Those are still the 2 most important things in case y'all are wondering, okay? And listen, I may have had a slight advantage because of my position as a pastor because we would talk about all kinds of people from the church. Anonymously, of course, and never here because they didn't move here with us. But here's what I mean by that. I would just simply roll out a generic scenario and say, you know what? Hey, I talked to this couple this morning and guess what they're thinking about doing? Do you guys think that's a good idea? What might be a better way for them to approach that? And it was just informal. Some of you are like, did you really do that? Of course we did that. So let me make a plug for family dinner because all kinds of studies have been done to link family meals to a number of positive outcomes, okay? From better academics to better behavior to reduced drug and alcohol abuse. One study actually concluded families who were spiritually vibrant shared one amazing thing in common. They had loud tables. Loud tables. Now, let's turn a corner here, and this part is definitely for all of us. There's a part of what Moses is saying, which is a challenge to the entire nation, the community of Israel. And that challenge is to collectively influence the next generation. You know, the Hebrew culture is highly communal. They would have believed that it literally takes a village to raise a family, okay? Meaning that you as a parent do not have to do all of this alone. It's something that we all should be working on together, okay? Because it's my belief that when you bring together a strong, or at least I intend to be strong family with a strong church, that we are going to hopefully produce, I believe, the very best kid possible with the very best chance to love God. Now listen, our church wants to come alongside of you, not as a substitute by any means, but as a supplement. You know, throughout this morning, hundreds of volunteers are serving, and when I do this, there's back there. Again, there's a whole other world back there of children, okay? They're gonna show love to hundreds of kids, relating the Bible in appropriate ways, right? Connecting kids to other kids and showing a positive adult influence in their life. Children's ministry has had so much influence in a kid's life that about 30% of adults will now say that a children's ministry leader helped them come to follow Jesus. And so we take this seriously, right? We take kids ministry and our Chaos student ministry seriously because we want to partner together. It's why we give big chunks of our budget to it. It's why we staff it. It's why we invest in it. So let me give you just a couple of ways in which we can partner together, and a couple of them fall on you. And that's the first one. You need to be aware of what your kids are actually learning when they're under our care. We used to pass out a takeaway in our kids ministry. It had all kinds of talking points and questions and things like that, and nearly every single one of them ended up in the trash. That's why you don't get that anymore, okay? I'm not saying that's why your kid didn't turn out good at all. That's not what I'm saying. Maybe. What we do is memory verse. Your kid gets a memory verse all the time. You should know what it is. You should be learning it with them. Learn the memory verse. Talk about it. Hey, tell me about this here, okay? Find out what is going on back. You should be familiar with a Facebook page for parents, a parent resource, a family resource Facebook page, okay? Listen, this is just an aside, but when our student pastor, Dan, sends you an email or he invites you to come to a meeting to say, hey, I want to tell you what's happening in student ministry, read the email. Come to the meeting, okay, and be informed about what's happening in student ministry. And because we truly want to come alongside of you and partner together, I kind of tasked our family ministry to put together a feedback form. And you'll find it on the back side of the notes. In the bottom right corner, there's a QR code that if you click on that, screenshot that, it will take you to a family feedback form so that you can give us some information on how things might be working for your kids or your student or your family. So I would do that. Just take a few minutes, go there. It's going to help us better evaluate what's happening and what we could potentially do to actually partner together in a more effective way. Cool? Thank you. And then let me do this. Encourage you to consider child dedication. We changed this up the way we do this a couple of years ago, and we put more responsibility back on you as a parent. And we haven't done this for quite a while post-COVID. I don't know if we've done one post-COVID or not. So I expect a lot of you to jump in on this. But there's a link on that program as well that will let you sign up for child dedication, okay? And the way that we do that is we encourage you. We want to say we support you. We're here for you. Not only do we pray over your kids, but I pray over you as the parent. That's what we're dedicating, really, you as a parent to raise that kid. And so it's a simple prayer, right? Hey, we're dedicating ourselves to love God so we can model and teach this to our kids. If you've never done child dedication before, I would encourage you to get in on the next one. So let's wrap it up. Listen, we're not talking about being a perfect parent. We're not talking about having all of the answers to the Bible. We're just talking about being parents who are loving God, who take up the responsibility to train our kids to grow up to love God. Now, you might say, okay, I don't know how to do that. Or I don't know where to start. Or you might say, I want to do that. How do I do it better? And this is going to be unsatisfactory for some of you, but these are the kinds of things we're talking about in the next few weeks. Next week, I'm going to give it my very best shot, and this is all I know about it so far. I just know I need to try to figure out how to present it to you. Next week, I'm going to give my very best attempt to address adults, and this is going to end up being for all of us. But what would it look like to have the healthiest version of you that is then leading your kids? Meaning, some of us grew up in an environment, and we learned some really bad habits, and we learned some really bad things, and we got hurt, and we got wounded, and we're just passing it on. Or we have picked up some bad things along the way and we ignored something that happened in our life and we're trying to raise kids to love God and we don't really have our own stuff figured out over here together. I want to give a shot at that next week. So what would it look like to go inside of ourselves and maybe do some hard work so that we can pass on the very best version of us? I think that would be amazing. You should pray for me to figure that out. All right. We're going to spend a week on developing a family mission statement, okay? How do we actually parent with some intention rather than reaction? We're going to spend a whole week talking about praying for your family, okay? Praying for your kids in different stages of life, praying for your kids if you don't have the influence that you want, that you wish you had, praying for our parents, probably calling them up and going, I was a turd, I'm sorry, please forgive me. But, pray for me, I'm praying for you. However all that works, okay? We're going to spend on Mother's Day. I have a verbal that a guest is going to join me to have a conversation, all things parenting and family. That's going to be amazing. We're going to spend a week on the role that we all play together just doing this as the family of God, and then we're going to wrap everything up with a Kids in a Chaos takeover. So I think it's going to be amazing. I'm super excited about that we're giving some time to this. And so listen, you want a new family without leaving the one that you have. Here's my grand conclusion for the day. It starts with you. It starts with you, okay? To love God with everything you have, and you'll be best equipped to lead your family to do the same. So we wrap up this way nearly every week. We always sing a song at the end, and there's a number of different ways you can respond. Some of you like to just sit there and pray. Some of you like to jump up and give it your very best in the last song, and I encourage you to do all that. If you're a follower of Jesus, then please take communion. It's in the back of the seat in front of you. Or let me just circle back to this for just a second, and this isn't just specific to dads, but we did talk about this a minute ago. But listen, it might be your day to finally say, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I need some help to do this. And the very best thing that you can do today would be to surrender your own will and your desire and your need to have it all under control to come before Jesus and say, look, I need to be taught what it means to be led by the very best father, because my kids are that important. And you might choose today to put your faith and your trust in Jesus. And I would love for you maybe just to pray somebody to that end in the next minute. Some of you are ready to be baptized, and you might follow those who are choosing to do that today. If you're in the room and you're regular, you know that if you go to that back corner, we will walk you through all that. So let me ask you to stand today, and let me pray through all this. Man, what a great morning. God, this morning, thank you for this time to just open up your scriptures and just consider these things and what it looks like to have the very best family possible, the one I believe that you want us to have. So God, I pray this morning that we would love you with everything we have. And if we don't know what that looks like, God, I just hope that we'll at least say today, God, teach us what it looks like to love you with everything we have. Because God, we really do want the very best for our families. And so God, today we just want to step into that, and we want to do it in this moment by saying how much that we love you. And we're going to pray these things in your name. Amen.